All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be getting started here. I just want to welcome everyone here to the SUNY Incubator in the city of Dunkirk as we get ready for the Governor Andrew Cuomo's 2020 State of the State address here in the city of Dunkirk. I just want to welcome all of you and thank you all for coming, taking time out of your day to come out here and listen to all the good things that are happening across the state, including Western New York. I was out in Albany recently and I attended the address, and I can tell you that there is a lot of things that we out here in Western New York are not aware of that are happening across the state, including here in our community in Western New York. The mention of a Phoenix was something that we are experiencing now, the spin-off. The development recently, we now have Wells has taken over Fieldbrook here in the city of Dunkirk. They are looking to invest close to $100 million right here in the city of Dunkirk for an expansion that will create 75 to 100 jobs. Each one of those jobs is projected to be paying a salary of over $40,000 starting in with a full benefit package. So these are not jobs that are paying minimum wage. These are family sustainable jobs that are coming into Western New York, and that's because of the spinoff of Phoenix. I'm not going to be talking to you much about the things happening in Dunkirk here, but I do want to mention that we have a very good relationship with our state elected officials. And when I was up in Albany, I had the pleasure of having a nice chat with our Lieutenant Governor at the mansion. And relationships are important. We have a very good relationship with the state, and Lieutenant Governor is from Western New York. She is paying attention to us here in Western New York, and especially here in the city of Dunkirk. When we need help, she pays attention, and we are getting much attention from the state. So without further ado, it is my pleasure and honor, and I'm asking all of you to join me in giving a very warm welcome to our New York State Lieutenant Governor, the Honorable Kathy Hochul.
You always make me feel so at home when I come here, and I literally got off a plane from being in Manhattan in the Bronx yesterday, and I'll be able to make it back and sleep in my own bed just a little bit down the shores of Lake Erie is really exceptional. But to come out here again and to see the people that are really the movers and shakers of a community that didn't get enough attention for most of my adult life, and I think that's a fair statement that we know what it's like. We had great industry, we had a great legacy, we had a lot of industry, whether it's growing grapes for Welch's and a lot of jobs that were great here, and all of a sudden they evaporated. Whether it was the steel plant where my dad worked, my grandpa worked, or countless other jobs that evaporated. Young people left and we really lost our hope. But I love coming back here because I know a comeback when I see it. And it's not just the Buffalo Bills making the playoffs again. Second time in a couple of years, and next year we're going the distance. But that's how I feel about this community. We're tough, we're resilient, and we always come back. And part of it is because of the resiliency of the people in this room and our mayor. I want to thank you, Willie, for your extraordinary work. We have done so much together. On a much warmer day, we were out at the beautiful pier looking at just the whole reimagining the future of that waterfront, which is spectacular. And I'm a boater on Lake Erie, and I talk to other boaters, and they are discovering the great amenities of docking there and spending time and money in the downtown area. So we've done a lot together. I want to thank you for that. Also, our other elected officials in the room. I know we've got great partners with our senator and assembly member. I don't know if they're able to make it here, but they certainly heard this in the governor's event last week. And I will tell you, his event, Willie was there, an hour and 20 minutes. I talk a little faster, and I'm going to go a little faster, so you don't have to worry about that if you got a date or something a little bit. Our new Chautauqua County Executive, Randall, I want to thank you. You already bring your experience from the legislature, and as you know, election day, politics ends and then we govern. And that's what we've always done in this county. And I look forward to being a great partner of yours. I don't know if our newly elected mayor of Fredonia is here as well. Mayor, did I guess it? Congratulations. And Anastasia Landis, who I got to know very well in Fredonia. Anastasia here, I don't know my glasses on, so you're sitting out there. But are we going to make sure that Fredonia wins the competition for the... I love the title, Small Business Revolution, like we're going to take over the world. And indeed we are, because when we can bring back communities like a Dunkirk, like a Fredonia, down to Jamestown, that shows that we can do anything. And I had the opportunity to do a video in support of the project. I don't know how many times I voted on my cell phone, but it's you're allowed. There's no limit. It's legal. You can vote on your iPad. You can vote anywhere you want. So I'm going to continue to use my social media to get the word out, because I want to make sure we win that great competition. So I thank our elected officials who are in the room. I may have missed some city council members. I apologize. County legislators. Sheriff in the room. Sheriff. Okay, Sheriff. Sheriff's in the room. I want to thank you. SUNY Fredonia president, we have a great relationship with SUNY Fredonia, and we appreciate this space here today. I don't know if Norm Green, our Board of Elections Commissioner, is here. Norm, okay, down the Norm Green. Tom Tranum, the head of the Chamber of Commerce here as well. Tom, okay, there's Tom. And Gino Russi, I want to mention you in particular, because I have seen the incredible work that you have done, getting people's lives restored with hope as a result of your efforts to help people who've been battling substance addiction. And I want to thank you. I've seen your work here in Western New York. I work with your brother down in the other part of the state, but there's a lot of good people doing great things right here in Chautauqua County. I also noted the fact that we're just 15 days from Dunkirk Dave doing his big thing, okay? And I don't know if many people do this, but I also went and visited Dunkirk Dave last August, because who visits the groundhog when it's off season, right? They get all his attention. February 2nd, I'm thinking, I got to give him a little love, because if we show him the love, maybe he'll give us some good weather, okay? So that was my strategy with visiting Dunkirk Dave. I had fun, but in 15 days, we'll also declare that the winter is over, and we're going to have sunshine and warm weather throughout the rest of the year. But I can't guarantee that kind of weather, but I can talk to you about the climate we have here in the state of New York. And days are very bright compared to where we came from. And I'm looking forward to talking about some of our local initiatives. And the mayor talked about what's going on with Athenix. I mean, for many, many years I'd come here and I'd get asked about what's happening, is it coming? And yes, it is coming, and the spin-off effect is already very positive. So that took a while, but it's up and running. And to have Wells Enterprises help bring back new life. And I went over to Fieldbrook Ice Cream Plant a number of times, and I love the fact that there's good paying jobs coming back. It's all people ask for. They want to stay here. They know that there's an exceptional quality of life here in Chautauqua County. There's so much to do. But if there's not a job, they're going to go elsewhere. And now we have the jobs. And the challenge is not finding the jobs, it's finding workers with the skills that those jobs require. So we are now investing much more in workforce development and projects to get people opportunities to be trained and help our employers getting well-skilled workforce as well. Also, you're winners of one of our smart growth initiatives, and so we had money coming downtown for the downtown, that connection, the biking, making these communities more walkable. How important is that for people's health, but also getting the fresh air, and just why not? I mean, this is, we're trying to draw people to our vibrant downtowns. And again, most of my life, living the middle class dream was living out in the suburbs. Everybody wanted a house way out. The downtowns were decaying. Nobody went there. And now, just to see the energy that's in our downtowns, whether it's incubator space, where we're helping nurture new businesses, craft beverages industries and businesses and cafes and downtown living, literally it's been transformed. And that's how we keep our young people. And what I get very excited about are the statistics that show, unlike when I was growing up in my big Irish Catholic family from Hamburg, everybody left except me. In fact, they would wonder why I left when they said, turn out the lights when you leave. And I said, I'm not leaving. I'm not giving up on this state. Now they look at me with envy. We stuck it out. And now young people, despite losing 10% of our young population the last decade, we are now up 16% in young people. So that bodes well for the future. We're getting young people to come back. Our unemployment rate was over 10% when the governor was first elected in this county. For 10%. Everybody knew somebody that was looking for a job. Now it's down to 4%. What an incredible change that has been as well, giving people hope and opportunities here. So those are just some of my reflections on what's going on here locally, a lot of good news, and also really playing to our assets. I mean, this is a significant wine country. We've got great attractions, Chautauqua Institution, a world-class place where I'll be speaking this summer, talking about the fact that New York State is the birthplace of the women's rights movement. We've got to keep owning that part of our history, and talking about what it means in 2020 as we celebrate the centennial of women winning the right to vote. So I'll be down in Chautauqua. I've been to Jamestown many, many times. We've all been to the Comedy Center. That is incredible, incredible, and it's been lauded by national magazines and newspapers all over. So what that does is it brings people to a part of our county, brings in revenues, let those people from out of town spend money in our brand new hotels down on the waterfront there, our hotels up here, and really just help us out with getting us on the map, because there is so much to do here. It's a great place to live, work, and play. So I'll give you an overview of what's going on at the state level. And again, I thank all of you for coming. Every one of you in your own roles is what I call a thought leader. You have influence on other people that you work with and in the community. And I'm a firm believer that optimism breeds optimism. So when you leave here and have a better understanding perhaps of why we do what we do at the state level, some of the good news initiatives that we're unveiling, that you also as a citizen have that knowledge and should share it with others. Because the psychology of a community depends on how people feel about themselves and the future prospects for not just them but their children. All of you are keepers of that. You can make it go up, you can make optimism rise, or you can make it go down. And I'm asking my fellow Western New Yorkers to help us stay on the rise. Okay. Okay. Do I click this pointing at something in particular? Okay. It gets so quiet in here. All right, let's talk about how many times you've all voted for Fredonia to win small business resolution. Okay. That's great.
That one's died.
Okay, while I'm holding this clicker, I'm going to tell you about a slide that's coming up, because it's called produce traceability. What does that mean? Nobody knows. I hold up my clicker and I say, if this malfunctions, like it did just now, other than a battery, we can trace it back to where it was made, right? Then if you need to have a recall, something bad happens, you can get to the bottom of it. We don't have that with our produce, our crops. And so what happens is, if there's a contamination at a particular plant, basically a whole region can be shut down while they try to identify the source. One slide that I'll skip over because I'm talking about it now is that we're going to be initiating produce traceability, because that's going to help our farmers. If something bad happens with something made by one of our local farms, we can localize it, we can clean it up without generating fear. Like right now we're told, do not eat romaine lettuce from the entire region of Southern California. We don't want that to happen here in New York as a strong agricultural community, so we're going to be working on it as well. Okay, the state of New York is strong. That's why we can start in with the jobs. I like this slide. Our economy is growing if you look at different metrics, and one of them is certainly how many jobs we create. Infrastructure. We have done some really bold initiatives with respect to infrastructure. I used to work with Senator Moynihan back in the 80s. He was on the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee, and at that time, you could count on a lot of money coming from the federal government to the states to invest in infrastructure, whether it's localities, the sewer and water lines, whether it's our highways, roads, and bridges, and then it stopped. Then it was left basically up to the states. And I assure you, when you're in government, it's a lot easier to kick the can down the road and let someone else worry about it. Our governor leans hard into infrastructure projects. We We're spending $250 billion to do what should have been many times over the years, but also creates good paying jobs for our men and women in labor. Some of our accomplishments in the past, the property tax cap, which is, and I thank our local elected officials. I know it's been tough. I was a local official up the road in Hamburg a long time, but as a result, our taxpayers in Western New York are paying a lot less in taxes than they would have. Also, the minimum wage increase, it's $15 downstate. It's going up to about $12 an hour here in upstate. And that's really lifting a lot of people out of poverty. There should be no scenario where someone works 40 hours a week and still lives below the federal poverty line. That's unconscionable. Also, marriage equality, the Excelsior Scholarship, a lot more students can be going to a place like Fredonia without having to worry about the cost of the tuition. Tuition in New York State is about $6,800 for an education at one of our SUNY schools, and we believe that should not be out of reach of anyone, so we make that happen for families making less than $150,000. Paid family leave has been a very successful program as well. The bottom line is people ask us, okay, just lower my tax. Can you please just lower my taxes? We have. For many, many years, New York State had a well-deserved reputation as being tax and spend, tax and spend. You want to keep spending, you got to keep raising taxes. That was not sustainable. That's what drove people and businesses out of our state. So you are paying less in taxes at the state level than you have at any time, probably in your lifetime, and we're going to keep that going. But also, as I talked about fiscal responsibility, we pass our budgets on time. I was an intern for the assembly office when I was in high school and college, and I didn't even know there was a March 31st deadline. The budgets were done June, July, August, and if you're a local government official or a school board member, you had no idea what your state revenues. It was so irresponsible. So we've instilled the discipline. We've made sure we've had state budgets on time, and our spending is less than 2%. We've invested over $10.5 billion in Western New York. I want to talk about the Buffalo billion. And again, that was just because of the alliteration with Buffalo. That was really Western New York billion, because a lot of that money has been spent in Chautauqua County. But look at, it's actually more like closer to $10.5 billion. Our unemployment rate's been down. As I mentioned, the property tax cap has saved Western New Yorkers $3.5 billion already. But what else can we do to move this area forward? Truly the greatest threat of our time is climate change. And we are feeling the effects right now with the extreme weathers. And if you've seen the crazy weather down in Lake Erie, I live on the shores of Lake Erie. I can't get over what I've seen just this year alone with respect to the extreme weather. That water levels going up 12 feet in a matter of hours. And what's happening up on Lake Ontario, the flooding there as well. Hurricanes down in New York City flooding the subway system. Flooding in areas where it's never been flooded, and tornadoes where there never were tornadoes. It's all happening to our state at enormous cost of cleanup and taking a toll on our communities. So we have to get around this, and this is something that we've decided we have to be very bold about in 2020, and that's why we're proposing a $3 billion Restore Mother Nature Bond Act. And what this will do is support cleaning up contaminated places, and this is just the Buffalo ones, but there'll be places here in Chautauqua County. But also resiliency, building more storm resiliency, restoring our habitats, and making sure that every citizen has what they're entitled to, and that is clean air and clean water. And that is often jeopardized. So we're taking this seriously. That is a $3 billion bond that has to be approved by the voters in November, and it'll be paid out over 30 years. But I guarantee this is one of those investments. So when we do this and start trying to reverse the negative effects of man's assaults on Mother Nature, that our future generations, our children and grandchildren will thank us for this. So I hope that you'll get on board with that and vocally support us when the time comes to vote next November. The governor just announced again today a very aggressive plan for making sure that we are the leaders in the electric vehicle industry. We need to get charging stations, making sure that we increase the capacity so people can overcome the fear of running out of a charge when they're on a highway. We can take care of it. We're doing it all over the state of New York. And if you want to know a little bit of history, just up the road in Buffalo, the very first electric vehicles started in the early 1900s in Buffalo. And that was because women wanted to have the freedom to take the new vehicle out for a spin on a Sunday, get away from their husbands, and it was too hard to crank the vehicle. So our smart people in Western New York came up with electric vehicles, but then when the whole robber barons and Rockefeller and Standard Oil decided like oil was the wave of the future, they became obsolete. What a shame that was. Can you imagine if we had stuck with electric vehicles, how much cleaner our environment would be? But we're trying to make up for a lot of lost time there. If you're familiar with our ban on plastic bags, single-use plastic bags that you get in the grocery store, now Wegmans has already started it, so that's already in place. If you shop at Wegmans, I do up the road. I went shopping a couple days ago, and I walked in with all my different totes. Okay? And I survived the experience, okay? You can do this too. It's not that bad. And you actually, if you give me one that says Chautauqua County on it, I will carry that in there. I'm like a walking billboard for all my counties. So you can have your favorite themes or whatever you want to promote on your bag. But we're going to do that. We have a responsibility. Similarly with these styrofoam food containers. Somehow we all survived before these became commonplace. We'll find alternatives and reduce our environmental litter. We have to do this. Have to continue supporting our men and women, the emergency responders, whether it's at the local level or the state level, because they've been called upon to do so much for us. And we have to make sure that they have the most up-to-date equipment. I mentioned cutting taxes for the middle class. They're going to go down even more this year. But also, we cannot overlook the burdens placed on our small businesses. I helped my mom start a little flower shop up in the village of Hamburg, helped my sister start a tech business. I know the challenges of small businesses, particularly women-owned businesses. We're going to propose cutting their taxes, state taxes, by 40%. Let them have a little more money back in their pockets for their personnel costs, for adding a new product line, or whatever they want to do. And between those two, we'll be benefiting a lot of our taxpayers. Well, if you all remember the Federal Tax Reform Act of 2 years ago, in order to fund a major tax cut for the very wealthiest and the corporations, they got the money from smacking New York State taxpayers. We are one of 10 states that have been paying significantly. And we calculated that the loss of the state and local tax deduction has resulted in New Yorkers paying $15 billion more to the federal government. I'll tell you why that offends me. Because we are already a donor state. We are one of 12 states that already send more money in tax revenue than we get back in services, basically subsidizing all the other states. And Senator Wyman used to do a report on this every single year, calling this out way back. And this just adds, and I'll just have a pun here, this puts more salt in the wounds. The governor is going to continue our efforts to have this undone. The House, under Democrats, voted to repeal this plan so we could get back to the way it used to be, the way it was since President Lincoln was president, where there was no double taxation. But we have to get it through the Senate and the President, and I'm not holding my breath this year, but hope springs eternal. We'll get that done. We also want to make sure that we increase the child tax credits to help our working families. And the paid family leave law. This went into effect last year. 128,000 families have now taken advantage of this. And what this simply says is that we prioritize our families. If you have a newborn baby coming home, or you're adopting a child, or at the other end of life's spectrum, you want to be there to hold your parents' hands or grandparents' hands as they take their last breath, as they were always there for you. This shows that we care about people at a human level. You should not have to jeopardize your job or have fear of loss of income when you take care of these very basic family needs. So paid family leave has been very successful, but let's talk about something that is still not accomplished yet. 83% of low-income workers don't have access to a single day of paid sick leave. They leave work, they lose income. So guess what? Everybody goes to work sick. And 62 or 63% of restaurant workers, the ones who cook your food, the ones who serve your food, 63% going to work sick because they don't want to lose the income for that day. So for a public health reason and for a personal health reason, and because it's the right thing to do, the governor is proposing that businesses from 5 employees to 100 offer their employees 5 paid sick days. I don't think that's exorbitant. 5 days to be able to take care of your health. Larger corporations offer 7 days. Many of the higher wage income or higher wage jobs already offer this, but it's the lowest income people who are hit the hardest. This has been a controversial issue, and I understand this, but let me talk to you about the evolution of people's opinions on this. First of all, there are now 11 or 12 states where it is legal. It is legal just across the water in Canada. We are surrounded by states where it is now legal. And we have had a system where there's been a disproportionate impact on communities of color. Our jails are filled up with young men, particularly downstate, where they simply were caught in possession of marijuana. And now that there's other states surrounding us, it is difficult for us to have something illegal that is legal in other states. But we want to learn from the lessons of the other states that have gone first. Number one, with respect to public safety. And that means that our law enforcement will need the training to make sure they can identify when someone is driving under the influence, because that will remain illegal. You cannot do that. But also talking about how we can make sure that the benefits of this are spread around to the communities that have been hard hit, and how we're going to make the opportunities available, because this will ultimately be a $2.2 billion industry. I'm not just talking about marijuana, I'm talking about medical marijuana, talking about making hemp programs available for people, how we can use CBD oil to relieve pain. There's a lot more to be researched there. We've got to make sure we get it right. So the governor is going to make sure that this is studied. Have an institute that looks at this very deeply, and have an office of cannabis management. So we're not there yet, but I want you to know that there's going to be intensive study underway to see how we can get this right. A college education is so critically important. You know, it used to be a high school degree could get you a job, blue-collar job. And that was what our communities are built on. Today, for many, many jobs, you need a college degree, at least a 2-year degree. I mentioned before the $150,000. When this first started a few years ago, the Excelsior Scholarship, the threshold was 110, and it went up to 125. We realized that there's still a lot of families who fall in this gap, that if you have 2, 3 kids in college, I think about my father. I was in college, my older brother was in college, my younger brother was in college, then my mother decided to go to college too. So we had a lot of student loans going on in our household, but you know, let's just ease that burden. Let's let people reduce the stress of whether or not your child's going to be able to have a high quality public education here in New York. That'll help 16,000 Western New Yorkers. Legalizing gestational surrogacy, helping couples be able to, who are struggling with infertility. And this is a category where there's only 2 other states in the nation that don't allow it. When I hear that, I'm thinking, okay, what's wrong with New York? Why don't we help families plan their families where they'd like to? I mentioned our women's history. We want to continue advancing the strongest women's agenda. A number of items I want to point out here. Who knows what a pink tax is? Okay. Most people don't. You'll leave here, you'll now know what a pink tax is, because it means when I have my white Oxford shirt that I don't want to iron, because I don't really like to iron, I take it to the laundromat, take my husband Bill's white Oxford shirt, they look identical. Mine costs more to dry clean. Okay, that's called a pink tax. There are so many areas we've identified where the cost of services for women that are comparable to men's, the women pay more. We're going to identify that and then eliminate those places. Let's talk about the Equal Rights Amendment. Again, I want you to be telling everybody, this is the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote. I'll say it 100 times. But this year, what else can we be doing to advance the cause of women? Because the Equal Rights Amendment was first proposed in 1923 by another New Yorker, Alice Paul, a federal ERA. Steps were taken yesterday. The state of Virginia passed it. We needed 38 states to ratify to get it over the finish line. I believe that'll happen. But then you step back and say, we'll get a federal ERA, finally, something we've been talking about since I was a little kid. What about the state of New York? Why doesn't the state of New York, the birthplace of the women's rights movement, have our own ERA? But because we're New York, we're inclusive. We love everybody. So we're talking about having an Equal Rights Amendment, so discrimination on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, disability, ethnicity, and national origin are also banned as well. That will be known as an inclusive ERA. We should get it done here in the state of New York as a model to other states. Some of the other items that we focused on is expanding the number of women in corporate leadership roles, on boards, protecting women from domestic violence victims from gun violence. The sad fact is that 50% of women who are murdered in this country today are murdered by a known individual, a past or present intimate partner. And if we know that someone has been charged with domestic violence and they have access to guns, that is not a good scenario for a lot of women. So we are going to continue our smart gun safety initiatives, and this is one of them, to make sure that we take the guns out of people who perpetrate domestic violence. We're going to continue our airports initiative. We've transformed airports all over the state of New York. Again, making investments that should have been made all along that just weren't done. We've done a lot of, and we're going to continue. This is really important to me because our farmers, and I know so many of them, have taken on the chin with the extreme weather, with the tariffs that were unexpected, with the low reimbursements for milk these days, the dairy price supports. A lot of other factors are going against them. We're losing family farmers literally every single day, and that is a tragedy. So we are going to reduce taxes significantly for our farmers for starts, and that'll include at least 4,000 farmers. I mentioned the produce traceability. You already know what that is, right? You all know what that is now. I can skip that slide because I told you about it. Also, we talked about the craft beverage manufacturers. How explosive has this been? And this has been great for our farmers because we want to make sure that we have the local ingredients and promote that as part of an important industry for us. All we got to do is get rid of some laws that were in place since Prohibition. Like, that's what I love about our governor and our administration. Like, we just say, someone will say, well, it's always been done that way. And we say, why? Explaining why. Prohibition's been over for a while. Let's do some common sense change. And this really resulted in a brand new explosion for our industry. And again, these beverage manufacturers locate and sell their product downtowns. You've now revitalized the downtown. The Erie Canal is still an important part of our identity. We're celebrating the 200th anniversary, but the governor says, let's figure out how we can use the canal not just for tourism, but also for mitigate flooding and deal with restoring our wetlands. We'd love to see high-speed rail here in upstate New York. Senator Moynihan talked about this, and people told him it was too expensive back in the 1980s. Can you imagine if we had done it then, how much cheaper it would have been? But despite that, the governor has said, you know what, since we were talking about it decades ago, they've done it in China, Japan, they've expanded in Italy, France, Germany. Anybody who travels comes back home and say, high speed for us is 51 miles an hour. That's not going to be great for your community if you want to expand beyond your own community. So this could really reinvigorate all of upstate New York. And the governor is commissioning a study to look at the engineering challenges. Are the costs truly as high as they claim to be? And is there just a way to get this done? We also have to protect workers in the gig economy with basic protections and rights. And this is something I think is important. There's a lot of distrust of people in government, whether it's emanating out of Washington or scandals that happen elsewhere. We have to do whatever we can. We've enacted some of the toughest ethics reforms in the nation, but also it's about transparency. And I don't care if you're the President of the United States on down to local board members, you know, where you're getting your money from, especially if you're making $100,000 from the taxpayers. I think it's important to know where else you're getting income from, because that could affect, you know, that's an influence perhaps on some of your decision making. So why shouldn't the voters be able to know that? So we're proposing that if you have a job with the government and it's over $100,000, you're an elected official, that you release your tax returns. Our number one priority continues to be the health and safety of every single New Yorker. And this is really, really appalling to me, to know that today, because of a crass campaign orchestrated to go after young people and get them addicted to nicotine while they're still in middle school. Like my nieces told me, and Gino knows this, I mean, kids are already vaping, they hide it behind their ears, the girls do, in school, and they're able to inhale nicotine throughout the day, even before they're old enough to drive a car. We lost 2 more young people. The governor just announced this today. People are dying from this. And we have to continue stopping the sale of flavored nicotine. And they can't tell me they weren't targeting kids when their product is named cotton candy and sugar this or that. I mean, they're trying to really get the kids hooked, and it's just a horrible, horrible outcome, and now we're losing lives over it. This is tragic. I've been talking about this since I was in Congress, the high cost of prescription drugs, and why so many individuals, particularly our seniors, have to make heart-wrenching decisions on their priorities. Can they afford their prescription drugs? Will they have to have less food on the dinner table? Are they going to be able to pay their rent? And this is real. I literally was in Queens the other day, and a gentleman walked out the door, and everybody knows I'm from Buffalo. I brag about it all the time. He says, "Oh, I'm heading up to Buffalo tomorrow." I said, "What are you doing in Buffalo?" He says, "Well, I'm crossing into Canada so I can buy some prescription drugs." I said, "Why are you doing that?" He says, "I take a drug that keeps me alive. It is $3,500 a month if I buy it in New York. It's $900 if I get it in Canada." Now, the 900 is still obscenely high, but how sad was that this man had to take his limited money to travel to Buffalo to go to Canada and stay alive? That doesn't work for me in New York State. We have to continue being aggressive against the greed of these pharmaceutical companies who can negotiate lower rates. They absolutely can, and they're just not. We want to do what we can, particularly with the cost of insulin, because we're losing too many people because they've had to make these tough decisions. Ghost guns. It's always amazing to me how people misuse technology and are able to create in their own home the components of a gun. You can order online. 80% of it you can manufacture it in your house, and you literally have a gun that works without any background check. No traceability, nobody knows you have it. So we want to ban 3D printed ghost guns here in New York. This is also a story that has come out, and you hear about our veterans and how they've had to come back with PTSD, physical injuries, not able to get the jobs that they once had. And so our veteran community is particularly vulnerable to suicide, but as are our first responders. Last summer there was a whole host of very sad stories coming out of our New York City Police Department. I think 7 individuals took their own lives. And the stress that these people are under, our law enforcement, whether it's a rural area or a major city, they see the worst in life. And the problem is that the culture is such that there's stigma associated with asking for help. That they're worried about, will this have an effect on my ability to keep my job if I admit that I need help? We have to erase that stigma. These individuals who are out there for us every single day need to know that there's help available to them, and we can give that. So we're focusing on suicide strategies, suicide prevention strategies. I don't know if you all heard about what happened in Muncie, New York during Hanukkah just a few weeks ago, but it really, really ripped at us to know that there was such hatred in someone's heart that they would burst into a holy celebration of a beautiful holiday, not in a synagogue down the street, but in someone's own home. And the sense of fear that exists in these communities, it just reminds me that's not who we are as New Yorkers. I mean, we're the state that has the Statue of Liberty in our harbor. We've always welcomed immigrants. We've always been a place where people who've been persecuted for their religious beliefs could come and build a whole new life. We have been welcoming everyone from all around the world. That's who we are as New Yorkers. That diversity is why we're so great. And now, because of the unleashing of this hate, maybe it was under the surface for a long time, but they never felt it could really rise up, that there weren't other similar voices. But the internet and some of these horrible sites have really allowed people to find camaraderie in their hatred, and then to rise up and show a physical manifestation of it. It has to stop. And part of it comes from us calling it out when we see it. I addressed this in my opening of the Senate just a week and a half ago. And I spoke about the fact that in 1 year since I last gavelled in the New York State Senate, the rise in hate crimes was up 20% in 1 year in our state. We're going to do something about it, and we're going to be aggressive. And part of that, the governor's proposing the first in the nation domestic terrorism law that would include violence motivated by hate, and that will send a very strong message that there is no room for hate in our state. We want your support for this. And as community leaders, when this happens, whether it's here or elsewhere, we need to continue staying together and calling it out, because I want to be known as the year when it just stops in New York State. We really have to exhibit no tolerance and really bring the full weight of the justice system down on people who do this. But I truly believe, and I'm an optimist, coming out of Buffalo, I have seen some tough times, but I'm now living some great times. All of us are. And it is that sense of optimism that's going to propel us forward. When people talk to us from other parts of the country, or you just see someone, one of your neighbors in the grocery store, you talk about a good feeling we now have, that's going to be the catalyst for building that seed that we are a great place that has tremendous assets. It's a great quality of life, a great place to work. And if we believe that because it's true, we will share that with others, and this will be a place that even more people want to come to. We'll continue our growth, and there is no stopping us what we can do together. Thank you very much.
We did want to acknowledge some of the people we have here with us today. Our county executive, Sheriff Jim Catrone, Chautauqua County IDA Mark Geis, Mayor of the Village of Fredonia, Mayor Doug Essick, Chautauqua County Legislator Christine Starks, City of Dunkirk 4th Ward Council Member Nancy Nichols, our Town of Dunkirk Council Member Juan Pagan, SUNY Fredonia Provost Dr. Kevin Kearns, Chautauqua County Board of Elections Commissioner Norm Green, Patricia Hammond, Northern Chautauqua Community Foundation, Chautauqua County Chamber of Commerce President Todd Tranum, Chautauqua County Partnership for Economic Growth Nathan Aldrich, Vice President, Jamestown Community College, Dr. Kirk Young, Gino Russi, Hispanics United of Buffalo, David Rodriguez, Hispanics United of Buffalo, Publisher of The Observer, John DiAgostino, Dave Rowley, WDOE, and I know there are others here that I'm missing. This is what we had on our list. So I just want to thank everybody. I guess this concludes our presentation, and again, thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.